What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. Now in this video we are going to sharpen a plane blade. Now we're going to do this on a budget, or if you are skint, and we've all been there. So I'm going to use the tools that I started out using when I started out woodworking. This was my setup. I sharpened by hand. I got some pretty good results, so that's what we're going to do. So let's jump in, take a look at what we're going to need, and look at the technique that's required to do this. And it should save you guys a lot of money if you're just starting out in woodworking. It's really not that expensive, and you can get a razor sharp edge on your plane blade. Okay, let's jump in and have a look at what we're going to need. So I'm going to be sharpening the plane blade from my Stanley Sweetheart. It's number 4.5. So this is the plane blade. This is just a new type Stanley blade. It's a relatively cheap Stanley blade that I have in it. It needs to be sharpened. The edge is dull on it. It's had a bit of abuse and it's not in very good condition. So we're going to sharpen this. So I'm going to use a Faithful diamond stone. This is 1000 grit and 400 grit. This is in around £30 sterling, so around 35 euros. So it's relatively cheap compared to anything else on the market, and it does a pretty good job. We're also going to use a Waterstone. Now this one is as old as Methuselah's cat. It is a relatively cheap one. It's an 8000 grit and 4000 grit. Again, you can find these on Amazon. If you go to my Amazon store, you will see this stuff in my store, and you can use the link to get it there. So nice and simple. So we're going to use that. Then we're going to use a leather strop. This is a homemade leather strop. Again, super cheap. I just took a leather belt and glued it to a piece of 3x2. So a bit of auto salt metal polish, and we are away to go. So we're going to sharpen by hand. So I'll show you the technique to do that. We'll prepare the plane blade and we'll put a nice edge on this. So let's jump in and do it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is prepare the back of the plane blade. So right behind our cutting edge, we want to make sure that that is perfectly flat. Now we don't want to flatten the whole area, so we're going to use the ruler trick to flatten just behind the blade. So let's get on and do that now. And we're going to start on 1000 grit. That's all we should need to use for this process. The only thing I use the 400 grit for is if I need to remove a lot of material or if I need to re-flatten my whetstone. So the 1000 grit diamond stone with a small steel ruler. I'll get a close up of this now, and we prepare the back of the blade. Right, let's prepare the back of the blade, and like I said, we're going to use the 1000 grit side of this diamond plate. Now I'm going to use some hone right. I got this from Workshop Heaven. If you want to check it out, it's great stuff. It is a dual action honing fluid. It has anti-corrosion additives in it, so it stops your plate from rusting. This is diamond on top of a steel plate, so you want to keep that steel plate from rusting. This is the stuff to use. Now I used to just use soapy water, which works as well, but the rust inhibitor is a nice thing to have. So if you don't have the money to get the hone right, use a squirt bottle with some soapy water will do the job as well. But like I say, this is pretty good stuff, and I buy this from Workshop Heaven. So let's get some oil on the stone, on the plate. We're going to take a small steel ruler, line it up with this edge, and what that will do is going to tilt my plane blade up a degree, just to make sure that I'm not flattening this entire area behind the back of the blade. That's not necessary. All I want is from edge to edge behind the cutting blade. So how I like to do this, I want to keep your ruler in the same spot, and you want to keep your plane blade out to the edge of your plate. So and stop it moving around. I like to catch it with 3 fingers here. So with my middle finger and thumb, I like to catch the blade just like that and keep them pressed against the edge of the diamond stone. Now this is just how I do it. You do it whatever way is comfortable for you. That then acts like a guide, and it keeps the blade right in line with this edge. Then I take these 3 fingers, middle one to the middle, or sorry, index to the middle finger to the edge, and then thumb here. And I just catch it like that. So I have 6 fingers on it in total. Again, these 2 fingers pinching are keeping my plane blade locked in line with all this. And then it's just a case of forwards and backwards. We just want to polish that area right behind the blade. And you can see these 2 fingers are tracking the edge of the diamond plate, which is keeping everything aligned. And this should only take a couple of minutes, and we can just keep checking our progress as we go. Again, if you have something to put on this, I just have some paper towels down now, but if you get a dedicated area, get yourself some sort of plastic container to put all this stuff in, just to protect your workbench, because it does get kind of messy. So we're polishing nicely behind that now. I'm not quite out to this edge. I can see that the plane blade is not flat. No plane blade is really flat, except for the really high-end ones. So you just want to flatten this. So as soon as we get edge to edge, we're good to go. Okay, there we go. We're polished edge to edge. I'll give you a close-up on this now in a second, but it's a nice little trick. I think it's a David Charlesworth ruler trick it's called. You guys can let me know in the comments, but just keep your ruler on this edge of your diamond plate. It just tilts it up a few degrees. Again, 3 fingers, pinch here and here with your middle finger and thumb. Keep them pressed then against the edge of this. That keeps everything locked in place and in line. Acts like a little jig. That keeps your blade in line with this edge. Stops it moving back, because if you pull the blade back, you're changing the angle. So it just keeps everything at the same angle, and you can just work it up and down without that plain blade moving. So it's moving this way, but it's not moving in and out this way. So there we go. I'll give you a quick look at that blade now, and then we can get on with sharpening. Okay guys, there we go. So you can see polished from edge to edge behind our blade. So that's exactly where we want to be. Now it's not going to be an identical wear pattern to this. You might get a concave or a convex one where it's wider down here or it's narrower up here, because plain blades aren't truly flat behind them. That's why we have to flatten it and prepare the edge behind our cutting edge. So there we go. Once you're side to side the whole way across behind the blade, you are good to go. Okay, so now that our plain blade is prepared, we're nice and flat behind our cutting edge, we can now sharpen the blade. And this is relatively quick. It takes 10-20 seconds at most to do this. It's a nice way of sharpening our blades. If you get this technique down, you don't have to go back and use the honing guides all the time. I do this all the time with the Scary Sharp sharpening system when I'm working with my planes. Just take the plain blade out, give a quick sharpen by hand, and if it gets too bad, or if I need to reset the bevel or get the angle exactly right, I'll put it back into the honing jig and I'll reset it again. But sharpening by hand is actually quite a handy technique to have if you can do it. So let's do it. So I'm going to get a bit more honing oil on this. It is quite hot in the shop today, and I'm sweating profusely, and the honing oil and everything is drying up. Even the waterstone is drying up fairly quickly. So let's get on this. So what we're going to do is get a nice grip on this. Now, if you can get 5 fingers across the front of your plain blade, do. I can only fit 4 fingers on mine. So that's what we're going to do. Again, you want to make sure that you have the plain blade nicely held in your hand, nice and stable. Get a good grip that's comfortable for you. You want to set the blade on its bevel. So feel for that bevel, feel for where it is. Once you're set up, just raise it a couple of degrees, and then you can sharpen in a nice circular motion like this. Again, try and pivot from your shoulders. You're not using your wrists. It's all elbows and shoulders in this. Try and keep a consistent angle. If you want to roll off the corners, you can just put a little bit of pressure, lift up onto this corner, then back to the middle, and then up onto the opposite corner, and then back to the middle. Again, it's all in the shoulders, moving your body up and down the plate, and that should be plenty. Then we can feel that we have a burr all the way across the back of our blade. That's exactly what we want. And it only takes about 10 to 20 seconds, and you have a nice edge on the plain blade. So just a quick close-up of that technique. Again, I'm going to catch the blade in my hand. I'm using my middle and index finger on the plain blade. The same with the other hand, interlocking my thumbs. I can only fit 4 fingers across the front of my plane. I see some people use 5. I can't get them on. So 4 fingers is what I use. Again, it's my index and middle finger from both hands. Just locking up my thumbs. Feel for where the bevel is. The plain blade will sit right on its bevel. You just want to tilt that up a couple of degrees, not much. This is all about feel, and the more you do it, the easier it is to repeat. You just build that muscle memory. So just practice, practice, practice. There's not much to it. And then it's just kind of a circular motion, moving up and down the stone. Again, it's my body that's moving in and out. Everything is working from my shoulders and my elbows, not my wrists. Again, you do what's comfortable for you. The more you practice, the more you'll feel what works for you. Again, I'm just going to go up onto the right hand side of the blade, just to roll off the edge, drop back to the middle, up onto the left hand side of the blade for a few seconds, drop back to the middle, and we're good to go. And you'll have a burr. You should be able to feel that burr all the way across the back of your blade, and you know you're good to go. So now all I have to do is just remove that burr. Okay guys, to remove the burr from the back of the blade, nice and simple. It's just a ruler trick once more. Again, pinching with the thumb and middle finger. 3 fingers of this hand, 3 fingers of this hand, even pressure across the blade. And just rub that up and down. A couple of strokes should be more than enough. You can feel for that burr then, and we are good to go there. Now I'm going to move to the 8000 grit. I'm going to repeat that exact same process. So onto the water stone and a couple of rubs on that. Again, it's only 10 seconds. Then we'll move to a leather strop. We'll polish up this edge. I'll give you a look at the edge and you can see, then we'll put it to the test and see how good we are. Okay, so onto the water stone. Again, this is a really cheap water stone. I think it's in around the 20 euros. It's made by Masterclass is the make. It's just an 8000 and 4000 grit water stone. Really cheap. I'm only going to give it a few rubs on this. Now to keep your water stone flat, you can take your 400 grit side of your diamond plate and just work that up and down just to ensure that that diamond plate is nice and flat. And it's so hot today, the stone is going dry in seconds here. So let's keep some water on that. That's where that squeegee bottle is quite handy. So again, same technique as before. I'm going to use 4 fingers. Wrap your thumbs, get nice and comfortable. Find the bevel. Once you sit on the bevel, just tilt it up a few degrees. And it's literally just going to be a few strokes on this. Moving up and down the stone in that circular motion. Nice and easy. Just want to feel for that burr all the way across the blade and we are good to go. Then raise up on the left, back to the middle, up on the right, and then back to the middle. With a nice little burr established across the back of the blade. So take my ruler, same as before. Slight little polish up and down, and we're good to go. Now, let's get to our leather strop. Okay, with the leather strop, again, like I said, this is just a leather belt. I cut it, stuck the 2 pieces of leather belt together, stuck it onto a piece of 3x2. It really is cheap, easy, and ready. It actually does the job. Again, if you're on a budget, if you're starting out in woodworking, you don't have to go mad and spend a heap of money. This will get you going. It'll get you in the ballpark of where you need to be. It will get your plane blades nice and sharp. And once you practice, you are good to go. And you don't have to flatten behind the plane blade every single time. Once that's flat edge to edge, that's it. It's done then. It's only a case of a quick sharpen. So 10 seconds on your 1000 grit, your water stone, then onto your strop, and you are good to go. Now we're going to use a strop to polish the edge of this blade, and that's what's going to give us that razor sharp edge. So a bit of metal polish, so auto salt, I think everybody knows that. Get a bit onto the leather strop. This really doesn't require too much technique. You don't have to be too clinical about this. Again, get all your fingers on, so 4-finger grip for me, interlocking my thumbs again. Feel for that bevel. I'm going to raise up onto it, and it's just all backstrokes. And again, you don't have to be too particular. This is just going to help polish that blade. And I'm rushing this, I just want to show you how quick it is to do it. That, and it's like an oven in here today. So it's unbelievably warm. I always make these videos on the hottest day of the year just to really test myself. But yeah, you'll see how polished this edge is now in a second. There we go, that should do. Then just any burr that we've built up. Again, all back strokes. And that should be perfect. Happy days. I'll give you a look at this blade now and then we'll try it out. Okay, I'll try and give you a look at this as best I can. Not sure how well I can capture this, but you can see there's a secondary bevel that's polished on that. I'm just trying to get the camera to focus on it, and it's not playing ball. Here we go. See, hopefully you can see the really shiny edge that's on that. That is our secondary bevel that we've just applied by raising the plane blade a few degrees, and we've just rolled off this edge and this edge here, just so we don't leave track marks in our timber. And that should be pretty good to go. It's a nice polished edge. It's all done by hand. Took a few minutes, and that's only because we flattened the back of the blade. But when we want to sharpen this again, it is literally just half a minute and you should be back in your plane and ready to go. Right guys, so there you go, we have a nice polished edge on our blade now, and you can see just how easy that is. It's just a little bit of practice and you can get a beautiful polished edge with super cheap stuff. Again, 35 euros diamond plate, 15 to 20 euros whetstone, again super cheap stuff, and a free leather strap that we made from an old leather belt that I just chopped up and glued to a piece of timber. A little bit of auto sol and you are happy days. Again, the hone right is great stuff if you want to add that. Again, Workshop Heaven is the place to get it, or just a bit of soapy water in a squeezy bottle will do. But just remember to dry off your diamond plate because you don't want that rusting on you. Now, a little bit of paper and we'll just see how sharp this is. You can see that is absolutely razor sharp. No issues there. We can cut paper all day. But we're not here to cut paper, we're here to take shaving. So let's do that. Okay, let's get our plane blade back in our plane. Now, I'm just going to drop on our chip breaker at a 90-degree angle, slide it up, rotate it around. The screw on this really old plane is kind of short, the threads are kind of short, so it's a little bit stiff. And we want to slide that up to our blade edge. Again, we don't want to drag that over our blade edge, just a couple of mil from that blade and we should be good to go. We can tighten that down again and that should be happy days. Now, we're going to drop that into our plane. Keep your plane, again, 90 degrees, your frog nice and flat. Again, careful not to hit that lovely new polished edge on that blade. Drop it in, make sure the yoke goes into our chip breaker. Everything lines up. Drop back on our lever cap and then lock it in. Might actually give that a little bit of a tighten. It's a little on the loose side. Like that, should be good. And then we can adjust our plane. So up against a nice light background, bring out your blade. You can see which side is starting to appear first and just move your adjustment lever to that side and straighten that blade up. Just work it out. Make sure everything is nice and even coming out and you should be good to go. There we go. That will do nicely. Now let's get some shavings. Okay, we have a nice bit of oak in the vise. We might as well use a nice hardwood to test out this plane. After all, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So we just want to advance that blade now until it starts to take some shavings. Take up the slack. Okay, I'm majorly on the left-hand side here, so I want to adjust that over. Back towards the middle. There we go. Advance the plane blade and take some nice shavings. There we go, let's make a nice short work of that oak. That's not too bad. Now that feels lovely and silky smooth. And for a plain blade that was sharpened by hand on some really sharp or cheap sharpening equipment, there's nothing wrong with that. That will get you woodworking. And if it's making short work of the oak, it will have absolutely no problem on pine. And that's a pretty good finish. If you went at that with sandpaper, you would ruin it. Right guys, there we go. That's how to sharpen a plain blade when you're absolutely skint or when you're starting out woodworking like I was. They are the tools that I use. I still have them here in the shop. You can see just how easy they are to use and you can get some great results. So we hit a bit of oak there. It did a pretty decent job on that oak, I have to say. I'd be more than happy with that with this setup. So it's a nice, easy technique to use. Hand sharpening shouldn't be scary. If you just a little bit of practice and there's no reason why you couldn't do it. Again, very cheap stuff. Again, all linked below if you want to check it out. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, guys. Hopefully that's been informative. Hopefully that inspires some of you to get out and start woodworking again. It don't have to cost you a fortune. This hobby should not be super expensive. It should, and money should never be a barrier to entry. So that's just a way to get your plain blades extremely sharp with some really cheap tools. extremely fast and get you woodworking as quick as you can. Now, sun is going in and out, but it's unbelievably warm in this shop today. Now, I know my Australian viewers always laugh at me when I say it's warm, but it's 35 degrees in this shop today. That's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here now, guys. I shall see you in the next one. Take it easy.